Don't scroll, because what you're about to hear might remind you of a moment you've never fully understood. There was a season in your life when the silence became louder than every voice you had ever trusted. One by one, people stepped away. Some left with explanations. Others disappeared without a single goodbye. You wondered if you had somehow become invisible, if your heart had been forgotten by everyone who once promised they would stay. But what if heaven saw that lonely chapter very differently? What if the story you have been telling yourself is missing the most important person, the one whose presence was never meant to be obvious? Listen carefully. Not every guardian announces their protection. Not every act of love asks to be recognized. Some souls remain hidden because the timing of their revelation is more important than the comfort of immediate answers. And today, something hidden is beginning to rise to the surface. Think back for just a moment. Can you remember a day when everything seemed to fall apart, yet somehow, against every logical expectation, you found enough strength to keep moving? You called it luck. You called it coincidence. You called it survival. But what if none of those words were the truth? There are moments when heaven quietly places one soul near another. Not to be seen, but to stand watch until destiny is ready to reveal why their paths were intertwined. You may have never noticed them. You may have never heard their voice. Yet pieces of your journey have carried fingerprints that were never your own. There is a reason certain disasters never reached you. A reason some betrayals ended before they destroyed your future. A reason your heart somehow refused to give up, even when your mind had already surrendered. Someone, somewhere, was silently hoping you would make it through. And the strange part is, they expected nothing in return. Imagine a candle burning inside a dark room. No applause. No audience. No recognition. It simply keeps giving light because darkness is not stronger than its purpose. That is how some connections begin. Not with grand declarations. Not with dramatic meetings. But with unseen prayers whispered for someone they have not fully met. Perhaps you've felt it before. A sudden wave of peace arriving without explanation. A feeling that someone understood your pain, even though no one around you seemed to. A door closing that later became the greatest blessing of your life. Those moments were never empty. They were quiet reminders that heaven rarely works in ways the world expects. And while everyone else measured your worth by what they could gain from you, one soul was learning to value you simply because your existence mattered. They never needed your perfection. They never required you to become someone else. Without realizing it, they were already carrying compassion for wounds they had never even seen. Doesn't that seem impossible? Perhaps. But the greatest miracles often sound impossible until they become memories. Here's something few people understand. When destiny prepares two souls to meet, their journeys often begin long before their introductions. One is learning patience. The other is learning trust. One is healing from abandonment. The other is discovering the courage to protect someone they've never fully known. Separate lessons. One future. You thought your loneliness was proof that you had been forgotten. Heaven saw it as preparation. You believed every goodbye meant the end. Heaven knew some departures were making room for a connection that could never grow inside crowded spaces. Even now, as these words reach your heart, something within you may feel strangely familiar. Not because you've heard this message before, but because a deeper part of your spirit remembers truths your mind has been trying to explain for years. And if that feeling is growing stronger, then the next revelation may answer the question you've carried through every lonely night. Because there was one specific moment, one moment you almost overlooked, when your soulmate silently chose your side while everyone else walked away. And once you recognize what happened that day, you may never see your past the same way again. There is one memory hidden inside your past that your heart has protected without you even realizing it. It does not seem extraordinary at first. No flashing signs. No dramatic miracle. Just a quiet moment, almost too ordinary to remember. Yet heaven often hides its greatest revelations inside moments the world would easily overlook. Ask yourself something. Have you ever felt an unexpected sense of peace after crying your hardest? Not because your problems disappeared, but because something deep inside whispered, "Keep going." Where did that whisper come from? Many believe strength always comes from within. Sometimes it does. But there are moments when heaven allows another soul's hope to become the strength you suddenly cannot explain. Long before your paths crossed, before names, faces, or promises, your soulmate was unknowingly becoming part of your story. Not through conversations. Not through photographs. But through purpose. While you were fighting battles no one understood, they were being shaped by different storms. They knew rejection. They knew waiting. They knew what it felt like to pray without immediate answers. Every tear they shed was preparing them to understand yours one day. Every disappointment they survived was quietly teaching them how to protect the heart they had not yet met. Nothing was wasted. Not your pain. Not theirs. Heaven was writing two separate chapters, destined to become one unforgettable story. But here is the mystery. There was a day when everything around you suggested that you should give up. Perhaps someone betrayed your trust. Perhaps a dream collapsed before your eyes. Perhaps you smiled in public while breaking in private. You believed no one noticed. You believed your struggle echoed into empty space. Yet in that exact season, your soulmate felt a strange pull they could never explain. A quiet urgency. An unshakable feeling that someone, somewhere, needed hope. They could not have told you your name. They could not have pointed to your face in a crowded room. Still, their heart kept becoming softer. Kinder. More patient. As though heaven was preparing them to carry a love strong enough for someone they had never met. Doesn't that seem incredible? Because destiny rarely begins with recognition. It begins with transformation. This is why some people enter your life only to leave. They were never meant to become your destination. They were only passing through, making room for someone whose love would not be built on convenience, but on understanding. The world often celebrates loud love. Heaven often builds quiet love. The kind that chooses faith before certainty. The kind that stays loyal before introductions. The kind that is growing even while both people believe they are walking alone. And maybe, just maybe, there were nights when your soulmate looked toward the stars without knowing why they felt incomplete. They thought they were waiting for success. Or peace. Or answers. In reality, their soul was already searching for yours. Not with their eyes, but with a longing that words could never fully describe. Every delay was protecting both of you. Because if you had met too soon, one of you would have been carrying wounds too heavy for love to heal. Timing was never your enemy. It was your shelter. And now, something is changing. The distance that once seemed endless is becoming smaller than either of you realizes. The lessons are nearing completion. The prayers that felt unanswered are beginning to move in ways you cannot yet see. But there is one final truth about the silent promise your soulmate made. A promise so powerful that it has influenced your journey from the shadows without either of you fully understanding it. And when that hidden promise is finally revealed, you will understand why certain people had to leave. Why certain doors had to close. And why your story was never about abandonment at all. It was about being guided toward the one soul that never truly stopped standing beside you, even in silence. What if the greatest promise ever made to you was spoken without words? Not in a crowded room. Not beneath bright lights. But in the quiet places where heaven shapes hearts before destiny brings them together. There are promises that lips can make. And there are promises that souls carry. The second kind never fades. It does not depend on distance. It does not disappear when life becomes difficult. It waits, patiently, until the right moment arrives. This is the promise your soulmate has been unknowingly living. While others measured relationships by convenience, heaven was teaching one person how to remain faithful to a purpose they could not yet explain. Every disappointment they endured became another lesson in compassion. Every unanswered prayer deepened their ability to understand someone else's pain. Every delay strengthened a love that had not yet found its destination. You may wonder. If they didn't know me, how could they have been standing beside me? Because standing beside someone does not always mean standing next to them. Sometimes it means becoming the person they will one day need. Think about that. If your hardest season had introduced you to someone who had never experienced loss, would they truly have understood your tears? If your deepest fears had met a heart that had never been tested, would they have known how to comfort you? Heaven was protecting something far more valuable than a perfect meeting. It was preparing perfect understanding. That is why your journey felt so long. Not because you were forgotten, but because wisdom takes time to grow. And love that lasts is often built in places no one else can see. There were mornings when you questioned your worth. Yet somewhere, without realizing it, your soulmate was learning never to judge a person by their broken moments. There were nights when you felt invisible. Yet at that very time, they were becoming the kind of soul who notices what everyone else overlooks. Can you see the pattern now? Nothing happened without purpose. Not the waiting. Not the silence. Not even the heartbreak. Every chapter was quietly preparing the next one. But there is something even more remarkable. Your soulmate was never the only one protecting this connection. Heaven itself was guiding both of you. Have you ever missed an opportunity that once felt devastating, only to discover later that it saved you from something that would have changed your life for the worse? At the time, it felt like rejection. Now imagine if that closed door wasn't punishment. Imagine it was protection. Perhaps one conversation ended because it would have led you away from your true path. Perhaps one goodbye created space for the hello that was always meant to find you. Perhaps every delay has been gently steering you toward a meeting that could only happen after both hearts were ready. The beautiful truth is this. You have never walked through your story alone. Even when the road seemed empty. Even when every voice around you became silent. Even when your own faith felt weaker than ever. There was an unseen thread connecting two lives that had not yet fully crossed. Thread by thread. Prayer by prayer. Lesson by lesson. That connection became stronger. And now, if you have been feeling unusual changes lately, if certain memories keep returning, if your heart senses that a new chapter is drawing near, do not ignore those feelings too quickly. Sometimes the soul recognizes movement before the eyes can see it. Because something has already begun. The chapter of preparation is quietly giving way to the chapter of revelation. But before heaven allows the final pieces to come together, there is one hidden sign, one sign that many people completely miss. It appears just before two destined paths begin to truly recognize one another. And once you understand that sign, you'll realize that your soulmate has been closer to your destiny than you ever imagined. The sign rarely arrives with noise. It doesn't demand your attention. It doesn't force itself into your life. Instead, it appears gently, like the first light before sunrise. Most people miss it because they are looking for something dramatic. But heaven often whispers before it speaks loudly. The hidden sign is not simply about meeting someone. It is about becoming someone. Have you noticed how certain things no longer satisfy your spirit the way they once did? Conversations that used to excite you now feel empty. Places that once felt familiar suddenly seem too small. Dreams you chased for years are quietly changing shape. At first, this feels confusing. You may wonder if something is wrong. But what if nothing is wrong at all? What if your soul is making room for a new season? Every lasting transformation begins with an invisible shift. The outside changes only after the inside has already begun to awaken. This is why, before destiny opens a new door, heaven often teaches you to release the weight you've carried for far too long. Not because your past has no value, but because your future cannot flourish while your hands are still tightly holding yesterday. Your soulmate has been walking through a similar transformation. Without knowing your name. Without hearing your voice. They have also been letting go. Old fears. Old disappointments. Old versions of themselves. Piece by piece. The person they were is making room for the person they are becoming. Can you feel how beautifully these journeys mirror each other? Separate roads. The same destination. And here is something that may surprise you. The people who walked away from your life were not always interruptions. Some were simply indicators that one chapter had reached its ending. Just as autumn releases its leaves without fear. Your life has been releasing people who were never meant to walk into your next season. That does not mean they had no purpose. It means their purpose was complete. Every goodbye quietly cleared another step on the path ahead. Even the tears you cried carried hidden seeds of growth. Even the nights you questioned everything were shaping a faith stronger than certainty itself. Because hope is not born when everything is easy. Hope is born when the heart chooses to believe. Even while it cannot yet see. Perhaps this is why you are hearing these words today. Not by accident. Not by coincidence. But because something inside you is finally ready to understand what your past has been trying to teach. The loneliness was never your identity. It was a classroom. The waiting was never your punishment. It was preparation. The silence was never heaven's absence. It was heaven's way of allowing unseen pieces to fall perfectly into place. And now, the distance between your present life and your next chapter is becoming smaller with every passing day. You may not recognize it immediately. Destiny rarely announces itself with certainty. It often begins as a quiet feeling. A gentle expectation. A peaceful confidence that something meaningful is approaching. Do not rush it. Do not fear it. Some of the greatest blessings arrive slowly, so they can remain permanently. But there is still one final truth that changes everything. It is the answer to the question your heart has whispered through every season of waiting. Why did your soulmate choose to stand beside you in silence instead of revealing themselves sooner? The answer is far deeper than love alone. It reaches into purpose. Into timing. Into a plan that neither of you could have understood before this very moment. And when that final truth is revealed, you will never again mistake silence for abandonment. You will recognize it as one of heaven's most extraordinary forms of preparation. There is a reason heaven allowed the silence to last as long as it did. Not to keep love from you, but to keep love safe until both hearts were ready to receive it. If your soulmate had appeared during your deepest pain, you might have mistaken them for someone sent only to rescue you. If you had entered their life before they finished their own season of growth, they might have loved you with good intentions, but without the wisdom to protect what heaven was creating. So the waiting was never empty. It was sacred. Every day that felt delayed was quietly building a foundation neither of you could see. Think of a master sculptor standing before a block of stone. To everyone else, it looks unfinished. They see only rough edges and unanswered questions. But the sculptor already sees the masterpiece hidden inside. He removes one piece at a time. Never rushing. Never wasting a single movement. In the same way, heaven has been shaping both of your lives. Some dreams had to be removed. Some relationships had to end. Some expectations had to fall away. Not because your story was falling apart, but because it was finally becoming what it was always meant to be. And here's the beautiful mystery. While you were asking, why is everyone leaving? Heaven was asking a different question. Who will still recognize your worth when the crowd disappears? The answer was never found in those who walked away. It was quietly growing in the heart of the one who had not yet stepped into your life. Your soulmate's greatest gift was never their arrival. It was their preparation. Without realizing it, they were becoming patient enough to understand your silence. Gentle enough to hold your fears. Strong enough to remain when life became difficult. That is why this connection is different. It was not built on excitement alone. It was built on endurance. On unseen lessons. On quiet faith. On countless moments when both of you kept moving forward without knowing why your hearts refused to stop believing. Perhaps that unexplained hope you've carried for so long was never just your own. Perhaps two prayers were rising toward heaven at the same time. Two hearts asking for peace. Two souls unknowingly moving toward the same promise. And now, as you look back across your journey, the pieces begin to fit together. The betrayals no longer define you. The loneliness no longer controls you. The closed doors no longer feel meaningless. They have become stepping stones leading you toward a future that once seemed impossible to imagine. So if your heart has been wondering whether all the waiting has been worth it, let this be the answer. No season of faith is ever wasted. No sincere prayer disappears unheard. No act of unseen love is forgotten by heaven. The one who was silently standing with you through the darkest chapters was never absent from your story. Their presence was simply hidden until the right time. And maybe the greatest miracle is not that your soulmate will one day recognize you. The greatest miracle is that even when the world misunderstood your heart, even when people judged you by your broken moments, even when you felt completely alone, heaven never stopped writing a story that was bigger than your fear, stronger than your pain, and brighter than your past. So walk forward with quiet confidence. Release what has already ended. Welcome what is beginning. Trust that every step has meaning, even when you cannot yet see the destination. Because the same hand that carried you through every lonely season is still guiding you now. And when the moment of recognition finally arrives, you won't remember the waiting with sadness. You'll remember it with gratitude. Because you will realize that while everyone else was leaving, love itself was already finding its way to you, one silent step at a time. If this message touched something deep within your spirit, hold on to that feeling. Sometimes the quietest moments become the turning points we remember forever. And perhaps, your next chapter has already begun. Not every ending is the end of a story. Sometimes, it is the moment the true story finally begins. Right now, there is something your heart has been sensing that your mind has struggled to explain. A quiet expectation. A gentle stirring. A feeling that life is no longer asking you to look behind you, but to step toward something greater. That feeling is not asking you to predict the future. It is inviting you to notice how much you have already changed. You are no longer the same person who begged to be accepted by those who could not see your value. You are no longer chasing every closed door, hoping someone will reopen it. You have become wiser. Stronger. More compassionate. Not because life was easy, but because every challenge refined a part of your spirit. And that is exactly why this next chapter feels different. The love that is meant for you is not built on pretending to be someone else. It is built on the courage to be fully yourself. Your soulmate has been learning the very same lesson. They have discovered that lasting love is not about perfection. It is about presence. Not about never making mistakes. But about choosing kindness when mistakes happen. Not about having all the answers. but about staying when the questions become difficult. This is the kind of foundation that cannot be shaken by temporary storms. Perhaps this is why your path has unfolded the way it has. Every disappointment taught discernment. Every delay taught patience. Every goodbye made room for a better hello. If even one chapter had been different, you might not have become the person capable of recognizing genuine love when it finally appeared. That realization changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin asking, "What was this preparing me for?" And suddenly, the weight you've been carrying starts to feel lighter. Not because the past disappears, but because it no longer has the final word. Your future does. There is incredible strength in knowing that your worth was never determined by the people who left. It has always been rooted in who you are, even when no one else noticed. The right person will not discover your value by accident. They will recognize it because their own journey has taught them what truly matters. When two hearts have both learned gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, and quiet faith, their meeting is no longer based on chance. It becomes an opportunity to build something that reflects the very lessons that shaped them. So wherever you are today, whether your road feels clear or uncertain, whether your heart is hopeful or still healing, remember this. You do not have to force what is meant to grow. You do not have to fear every delay. And you do not have to believe that being alone today means you will always be alone. Keep becoming the person your future deserves. Keep choosing hope over bitterness. Keep letting go of what no longer belongs in your life. Because every step you take with courage brings you closer to the life you have been quietly preparing for all along. One day, you will look back at this season with peaceful eyes. You will see that the moments you once called abandonment became the moments that revealed your resilience. You will understand that the silence was never empty. It was full of unseen growth. And above all, you will realize that the greatest gift was never simply finding your soulmate. It was becoming the person who could truly receive and return a love built on trust, grace, and unwavering hope. Until that day arrives, walk forward with confidence. Choose kindness. Protect your peace. And never underestimate what can grow in seasons that seem quiet. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary blessings begin long before anyone can see them. They begin in silence. And when they finally bloom, they remind us that hope was never lost. It was only waiting for the perfect moment to be seen.